Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for coming around this Thursday night. We're going to dive right in. And the song I'm going to use as our little vehicle for tonight is Rhiannon, the Fleetwood Mac song. And it's in a minor key. We're going to be doing in B minor, as befits the D strumstick, B minor being the relative minor of D. And I think what we'll do, we'll just jump right in and I'll show you roughly the chords and kind of the simplest way to play it. And then we'll go back and we'll take a look at actually arranging it a little bit, because I think there's a way to do it on the strumstick that suits the strumstick and works nice with the song. And it's always hard when you're trying to emulate a full-on rock band with three strings. So sometimes shifting gears and going into another mood of a song from whatever the energy and feel of the original was is a good idea sometimes. Not that you can't rock out with a strumstick, you certainly can. But anyway, let's look at the chords. So it's basically B minor. And some of these words are going to overlap my hand just a little. Let me scooch over here. There we go. That should be all right. So that's your basic B minor chord there. Sometimes you might do it with the third finger instead of the second, depending on what feels more comfortable to you. And remember, anything you do on the bottom string, you could also do on the first string. So that's another B minor right there. And then there's another B minor if you do the bar up here at the 5th fret. And you can then from there add your pinky at the 6th, 7th, 8th fret. And that's yet another B minor. And then the next chord is G. There's your basic G. You could also do it this way, swapping the first string for the third string. We'll probably use that fingering a lot in this song. And then D, that's your basic D, is right there. Everything open is the simple D. These two notes here is another D. Using three fingers is a nice full D chord. And ironically, if you finger the fingering for a D chord on guitar, which is this shape on guitar, on the top three strings of guitar, that also comes out to be a D chord on strumstick. That's a coincidence. That's not like something you can count on in any other situation. And that's basically, I think, every chord that's in the song is you know, B minor, G, and D. And then it's just a matter of what order you do them in and so on, and what the rhythm is. The melody is also pretty simple on this song, and the bulk of the initial parts of the song, we've talked before about how notes on the open first string, 2nd fret, 1st fret on the first string, so 0, 2, 1 on the first string, and 0, 1 on the second string, and 0, 2, 1 on the third string. Those are all right under your fingers there, and that's a lot of songs will work with those notes, and then some excursions. In this case, we'll also need that 2nd fret note on the second string. Okay, and you know, the basic rhythm of the song, as most of the versions of it, that, you know, certainly the hit version of it, is something like that. So you could just play through the whole chorus, just going down, up, down, up, down, down, up, all the way through. Just like a bell through the night, and wouldn't you love to love her? She takes the night like a bird in flight, and who will be her lover? All your life you've never seen a woman so you could go through the whole song that way. Um, then you could also do the different sorts of rhythm things that we've done along the way. Um, in these lessons, we've done accenting, we've left out up strums, and we've done sometimes muffling with the forearm against the strings. We've done muffling with the heel of the hand against the strings, and we've done double time, where it's all down, 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 down. Instead of going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, you're going down, 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 down. Okay, so if we sprinkle a couple of those through, and again, this is just our first little quick look at this. If we sprinkle some of those in, Rihanna sings like a bell through the night, and wouldn't you love to love her? Take to the sky like a bird in flight, and who will be your lover? All your life you've never seen a woman taken by the wind. And now if you put that double time in little bursts, that adds some drive to it. You can hear that. But if I do all double time, all your life you've never seen a woman taken by the wind. To me that feels kind of monotonous and a little blah, because you get the energy of that, but there's only 3 notes happening. There's just not enough texture going on for my taste like that. So using the double time, all your life you've never seen, in little bursts is a way to do that. And we'll get to the other parts of the song in a second, but the way I think the song works really nicely on the Strumstick is to slow it way down and interpret it a little differently. And if you happen to look for some of the versions of Rhiannon that are findable on YouTube, Fleetwood Mac has done it sometimes with a very slow, free opening, where Stevie Nicks sings it like a ballad, a very open, slow kind of, each phrase. Rhiannon sings like a bell rings. I always sing things there. Rhiannon rings like a bell in the night, and wouldn't you love to love her? And she's playing some arpeggiated piano chords slowly, kind of tinkling behind that. And that's kind of a clue to how we might approach this. And if you think about what this is a very mysterious song. It's a mystical song. It's certainly about an enchanted woman. And some people use the word witch. In the legend, the witch is not actually the word that's used, but whatever concept of a mystical, connected to the other world person that the song is about, that's part of the feeling that you could start to work to try to evoke in the song. Hi there, Pam. Hi, Pam is joining us. Nice to have you be here, Pam. Thanks for coming. The way I've worked with this song a little bit on my own, and I like a kind of like I say, a mysterious. Now those are some things we've done before. So this is the rhythm is a slow da 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 da, or a little more da 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 da. But I'm doing a little relax of the fingers to cut those notes off. And then here's that slowly. And when I flop those fingers over, I'm still doing the strums, so I get the snare effect in there, that little ch, da da ch, da da, ch, da da. Now if you just do da da ch, da da with nothing else happening with the strum, it gets a little chunky. So we need a little more elements into the rhythm there to kind of keep the smoothness going. So I'm going da da ch da 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 ch da. And when you do that flop, sometimes you might accidentally fret that note. That's not the intention. So with that rhythm in mind, now you can also bring your forearm slightly against the bridge. This may depend somewhat on the shape of your forearm, but the idea is that you want part of the fleshy part of your forearm to touch the strings just in front of the bridge, so you're getting a muffled note, and this we call a forearm mute, which is different than a palm mute, where you've got the heel of your hand, which should be called a heel mute, but it's called a palm mute. And if you get that contact point too far away from the bridge, you get a percussive sound, but you don't get any of the pitch of the strings. But if you can kind of pull it back and forth, no muffle, no muffle, no muffle, oh, little muffle right there. But I've still got, so I can still hear the chord. And the way, because of the angle of that, you can easily, and you might not be able to see that, I'll exaggerate it. I'm going da da plunk plunk, da da plunk plunk, da da plunk plunk. So just by subtle movements of your arm, you can unmuffle and muffle. So I'm doing that forearm mute, and I'm also doing the little flop over with on the first strings here. And again, slow. Rhiannon rings like a bell in the night, and would you love to love her? Now that gives a calm and sort of open feel to it, but there's the definite tension there from the minor chord. So it's got kind of a spooky feel to it, and slowing it down almost makes it a little spookier. And you lose some of the driving energy, but again, you don't have the whole Fleetwood Mac band, backing you up and pushing the thing along and driving along. So this is an interesting way to interpret it, and you may choose the tempo that you like and make the arrangement that you like, but we're going to use this perspective now tonight to look at putting a number of little elements into the song. And as always, when we do a song, we're thinking two things. We're thinking the song itself, but we're also thinking about techniques that are applicable to many different songs. So the stuff that we're doing, some of this we've done before, and it'll be reinforcing, and some of it may be, depending on how many lessons you've been to, some of it will be, some of it would be, might be new to you, or it might be familiar. Don has to check out early, so thanks for checking in, Don, and we'll see you on the videotape. And just I'll mention that for the people that are new joining us tonight, that if you look at right over my head here, strumstick.com, on strumstick.com there is a link under the video navigation tab. There's a link to the streaming Strumstick lesson page, and all of the video of each of the lessons that we've done in this series are on that page. It may take me 3 or 4 days to get like the current lesson up sometimes, but basically they all wind up there. And if you click the link that you used to get to this video, after the video is done, it'll take you to directly to YouTube, and you'll be able to see the recording on YouTube also. And that may also take a day or two before that's completely effective. And if you have any questions, info@strumstick.com is how you can write to me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can also pop questions into the chat if you're able to use the chat there, and you might have to pop them in twice if chat happens to be busy, and if I don't glance over when yours is in one of the visible areas. Okay, so with those things said, there's the melody to the song falls right under your fingers when you finger that B minor chord. So and so you can see I'll just make all the other fingers go away so you can see each of those notes. So first fret on the first string, da, sorry, open on the first string, da, da, first fret, second fret, first fret, open, second fret on the second string, da, 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 da. So here that is again. So you can finger all those notes within the B minor chord. And then to the G chord. And I did each note a couple times to sort of give you a chance to see where it is. Now that fingering there is a hard fingering on any instrument, okay? So that's not going to necessarily come easy. First of all, you're playing the G with the pinky on the third string, third fret, and the first finger here. We've said before that this G chord, swing your elbow in, like right over almost to your navel, to kind of swing that pinky over across the neck, and let your thumb be a bit behind the neck, not up on top like that. You won't be able to get that pinky there unless you feed out some extra length to wrap over to get to there. And you might have to have your thumb not right up here behind the first fret, but maybe down past the first fret a little bit, so that it's a little closer to the pinky, so you got a little more squeeze leverage against the pinky. The first finger is a lot stronger than the pinky, and it can handle, giving up the usefulness of the thumb right opposite it. So, and if your thumb was super flexible, you could just drop it right down here, but I don't know anybody whose thumb is that flexible. So you drop it down just, a half an inch from where you might normally have it. And that helps the pinky there. But now this second finger to drop in here on this note, that's really hard to get that that second finger in while this finger is still fretting that note, because unless your nails are trimmed just right, the fingernail hits the fingerboard there and keeps your finger from actually squeezing the string. But if you let this first finger come up a little, it lets you sort of rock your hand slightly towards this way, and this finger comes in a little straighter. So that whole sequence would be so you can incorporate that into the rhythm. We're doing. When I say incorporate into that rhythm, there's so many notes happening, you actually won't be able to do all those muffles and things. What I mean is you can start with that rhythm and move into that sequence. You could get that little muffle thing going on with that, but if you're going to work the melody, and you might as well have it just be exposed and out there. So it's mostly going to be da 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 da. Okay, and then that happens twice. And if you want to adjust those notes so they happen to the timing of the words, you'll have a melody back up to exactly what you're singing. However, if one of them is, if you finger one of those notes a half beat early or a half beat later, it'll still be okay as an accompaniment, because the rhythm of the song goes da 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 da. So you could follow that exact rhythm, da 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 da. And let the rest of the strumming not hit the melody notes, okay? Or, you know, by just maybe kind of hitting the bottom string or something like that. So you're still keeping a little tick in there. I'll do that again. It's almost like this is my rhythm guitar. Because if I want the note to just be heard once, not da 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 da, I have to hit something else or do nothing. So you could go da, 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 da. But I kind of like having the rhythm stay with that. So we've got da, 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 so we're doing a rhythm that matches the melody and then also is in there for rhythm effect also. And some of those chords, and again, that's that slightly dissonant chord there, but it's got a spooky feeling to it. And I'm removing that when I don't need it. When I'm doing that open string on the first string, I'm not going to leave this in there because you'll still hear those two combinations will sound the same twice in a row. Do, da, 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 instead of da, 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 dum. Oh, so, da, 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 so that's that first little bit of melody. Now, in the hit version of it, there's a beautiful guitar harmony chords that happen in the beginning, and you can sort of suggest that by doing something a little bit different. Once you have that basic melody theme down, if you have that sort of under your fingers, watch, we have da, da, da. Now this is almost like going to an A chord, da, 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 which is not in the song, but it doesn't hurt if you go to that semi-A over there. So we're going da, 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 and it's the same two fingers you're using for the B minor, just moved over one string. Da, 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 and it's making da, 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 da melody on the first string and making da, 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 da happen on the second string. So you hear da, 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 da. Now from there, this is the next note. You could slide this up. Da, 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 so I'll do that one more time slow and then play it up to speed. Da, 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 which I often finger this way. Da, da. And in time that goes like. That sounds like the record. Maybe without the bass and the drums and the keyboard, but so that's a nice little signature element to put in there, and it sounds great with the words. there something we could do on that G chord? There is. I'm going to take that G fingering, move it up one whole fret. Wouldn't you? So wouldn't you love? First string open, D, D. So we got first fret, second fret, then first string open. So when we get to the first string open, instead of going this, excuse me, still spring here in New Jersey. So when I get first string open coming as the third note, I'm going to go back to the G fingering. So it sort of sounds like you're doing da 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 da, but these three notes are in there. Don't you love to love her? Wouldn't you love to love her? So we've got. See, and that's another beautiful suspended chord in there. Now you have to think about when you change those chords to make it time with the rhythm. And then so at our slow speed. So that's a really beautiful chorded beginning to the song. And you can do one other thing in there. If you want to not start it strumming, if you want to keep it kind of quiet and tinkly, you could do the sort of the finger picking equivalent, a little arpeggio here. Third, second, first. I'll do it with the open strings. Third, second, first. And that gives you a 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and rhythm. So if you just did that, it might get a little confusing trying to flop that hand back and forth while you're doing that thing. But if you just did the chords, now again, we have the patting your head and rubbing your stomach thing, because you're doing one sort of repeat thing with this hand. And I suggest move your hand back towards the bridge, let your pinky and maybe your third finger rest against the edge of the strumstick so you have a very close-in reference. And picking single notes in a rhythm like that on the open strings, definitely you got to practice that by itself so that it becomes automatic, because as soon as you try to change chords while you're doing that, the first times you're starting, you're going to go, wait, what did I just do? And all of a sudden you're like on neither hand. So you need to be focused on this hand to get it so that it's stable and automatic. Thank you. I got a gazoon tight. And once this hand is such that you could, think about other things while it was happening and it didn't change, then maybe you could put another chord in and hold another chord for a little while. Now you could do that same thing with your fingers. All thumb, finger, finger. But then you don't have a pick in your hand for when you want to go to the strumming, if you want to shift to a strumming part. So I'll let you explore those possibilities yourself. And then all your life you've never seen woman taken by the wind. Okay, so there's a couple of things you can do to start the song off, you can also do this. You can do a right hand, palm mute while you do those little melody. But it kind of hampers your up strum, so that you might think of doing the forearm mute. And there, I think we now have the perfect combination for beginning the song, because this lets us take it down to start with, so it's got some place to build to. Now, do we have some melody we could put in for that, where the D chord comes? All your life you've never seen. Now the melody there goes. There's really two melodies, because sometimes the melody and the harmonies are a little hard to decide which one is which in this song. But she's definitely singing. All your life you've never seen woman taken by the wind. Pretty close to something like that, but it's starting way up here. All your life, all your life. And you could do that same thing an octave lower. All your life, second string open. All your life you've never seen. Now that's a little low for me, but you don't have to sing it in the same octave you play it. So you could play. That's lower. That would be like 3 frets lower, so you'd have to just do that note again. Taken by all your life you've never seen woman taken by the wind. Even as you sang the real melody. All your life you've never seen woman taken by the wind. So you can do that all from the open strings. Something like that. Or you could hold this note in there, maybe with the third finger. And then wind is the G chord. So wind, wind, wind. So you might just go to the G chord instead of playing wind. So if we work the melody into there, it might be something like. Sorry. And just do the G chord instead of trying to do wind, which, because you're holding this note, you could do, I suppose, you could do. That's getting a little complicated. And the other thing you could do is you could start the melody low. Taken by the wind, and jump up an octave on the strumstick. All your life you've never because we, rather than jumping all the way up to here to play it in the upper octave, we're doing the upper half of the melody on the lower strings, and then where the melody goes down, see it starts, all your life you've never seen woman taken by the wind. That's the upper octave version of the melody. And your life you've never seen woman taken by the wind. That's the lower octave version of the melody. So we're doing the first half of that melody in the lower octave, but the second half in the upper octave. So that you can keep it all right down here in this, you know, first, second, third fret position. Because you can fit that, you can fit that into the G chord. Okay, so now we've got all the way through, we got, let's see here, this is a nice little rhythm note, is this second fret note on the third string. That's a little tricky because that note. It's three notes. Wind. You could just go wind. Would you ever win? And there's a very open chord that happens with this G chord. There's a bunch of times where she's singing this open A against the G chord. Now there's no A in a G chord. That's the A is technically the second or the 9 note of the G chord, but it makes an open hanging kind of chord called a suspended chord. If you sing this note, while you're playing the G chord. It's kind of like a Beach Boy chord. And if you just finger the third fret on the third string and that's kind of the harmony that's happening in the voices at some points in this song when Fleetwood Mac does it. So let me show you where those would come in, and then we're ready to run through that whole first section and get to the rest of the song. And please, if there's any questions, tap them in. So we got see, I'm doing a little rhythmic figure there. And that covers most of those melody notes. Plus, it gives you a little rhythm thing going in the string. So you got all your life you've never seen a woman taken by the wind, and taken by the wind. And there's that rhythmic figure done on the G chord. And I think I like that a little better than trying to carry that melody harmony all the way through there. So starting slow, and don't try to do all these little melody bits and stuff without having run through them. But if you want to just work this rhythm and play with me on these chords. And if all you do is this. And I'm going to slow it down even more, because if you let it drift up towards the version of the song that's in your head, it's going to sound like a slowed down version of the original, as opposed to a different interpretation of the original, which if you get it slow enough, it brings out aspects that are that are heard differently. So it's a legitimate rearrangement, you know. So your rhythm might be, if you're not doing everything there, would be. So here we go. Rihanna rings like a bell through the night, and wouldn't you love to love her? Takes to the sky like a bird in flight, and who will be her lover? All your life you've never seen a woman taken by the wind. Now we get to the second verse, we might want to do something a little different to have it start to pick up. We've established this kind of slow, easy swing on that. And when you're working slow, the key to being slow is don't push it. Leave the spaces. We've talked about that before. Let each note ring. Let each note glory in the space that it has around it, because there's some time before the next note happens. It's like if you have a, if you have a lawn that's completely covered with dandelions, you have a yellow lawn. But if you have a dandelion here and a dandelion there, you can actually walk over and look at those dandelions. And despite their reputation, dandelions are pretty beautiful flowers when you get up close to them. So give each note a little air to breathe when you're working slow. And all that means is don't speed up and don't rush them. Let each note be in its time. And if anything, be a little lazy. Have a note be a little late rather than, certainly rather than being a little early if you're working for a slow swing on things like this. So we've got that slow thing with the muffles and the cutoffs and stuff, and the little melody chords going through the first verse. Now we go to the second verse. This would be a place to put in a couple double time down strums, and that's all it takes is two of them. Bum bum, dun, 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 dun. And I'm not going dun 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 dun. I'm just doing dun 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 dun. You notice by the time I get to the third one, it's almost like somebody was taking a tambourine and going. And by the third one, you're now hearing that in stereo. In effect, you're actually hearing that as a separate rhythmic element. So that becomes like a two-beat, two notes the same accent where you do it, and that adds some drive to it. So now you have listen to the transition for will you ever win? I have to remember to do it. See how that adds just a little more push as you get to the second verse. So you've got a kind of a little bit of a scene change or a little bit of opening up of what's going on there. There's another trick you can put in once in a while, and it's what I call the da-da-dum. It's just down up down, down up down, and it's like taking, like going and going. It's like the up strum added into the double time. But if you think of it as just da-da-dum, right at the beginning of the measure. So we're coming off of will you ever win? And maybe don't do it every time. that da-da-dum takes the place of the dum-dum at the beginning there. So as we go into the second verse, she, so we got da 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 da. And you can still do the flops and the muffle with the forearm. Sorry. I don't want to do the double time every time. I got to remember that because I told you that. So obviously you could do that double time every time. It gives a little bit of a disco feel. It might be a good way to practice it though, to get that double time thing in there. And then leave one of them out. So you can sprinkle those things in, and then the da-da-dum. And that might be another way to make the transition. Would you ever win? And just do what you had been doing, but make the transition from the first verse with just that little da-da-dum as the entry to the second verse. I did it a little differently. Sometimes. Either way. So having something in the second verse to make it be a little different than the first verse. You've got some choices there. The other thing you can do is if you're doing this forearm muting and keeping it really tight all the way through the first verse. What I mean by tight in this case is keeping it pretty muffled, not really letting the strings ring too much. All your life you've never seen a man. And then, would you ever win? Would you ever win? If you've sort of been very disciplined and kept that mute going through there, then just opening up the strings when you get to the second verse gives you a nice shift also. So there's a bunch of elements you could wangle through there. And then at the end of the second verse, it goes, will you ever win 2 times? It only does it once after the first one. That's a subtlety that they chose to do. You can emulate it or do it whichever way you prefer it. But at least you're going to do it 2 times at the end of the second verse. Would you ever win? And it goes to the B minor chord on win the second time, whereas will you ever win? It stays on the C chord the first time, and then when you do it twice in a row, stay on the C chord, and then second time, go to the B minor. Will you ever win? Will you ever win? And that B minor starts a little series where it goes 2 measures of B minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it does that B minor, G sequence 4 times. And there's a little kind of a lead guitar part that plays while the B minor's happening, and then it goes Rhiannon when you get to the G chord. So, will you ever win? Will you ever win? 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, Rhiannon. and then you can phrase that a couple ways. You can hold that Rhiannon and go to none when you go to the B minor, or you can go Rhiannon. So you can finish Rhiannon before you go to the B minor, or carry it through into the B minor. And I think that is done several different ways at different parts of the song too. But you have your choice in that. And since we're doing it slowly, so it might make sense to not stretch it out forever. It depends on your breath control and how steady your pitch is when you start to run out of breath and things like that. And you could play way you're doing the little lead part in there. Now that's not, in the song, of course, the lead, each of those 4 little mini leads is a different phrasing and a different rhythm. But as a placeholder, you would not do too bad to just repeat what you already know. And so on. Now, if you want to start to dress it up a little bit, you've got those couple notes. What if you change the order around on them? So I'm going. That's one way, or maybe. You could work within those several notes and that kind of a rhythm and change the order of the notes so that you figured out a little bit different melody in each of those little 4 B minor sections before the G's. So that'd be something like, I'll give it a shot. This will just be off the top of my head because I've not worked out 4 separate little melodies there. So we got... the 4th one, I might have added an extra one there. On the 4th one, it stays on the G chord. Now, because the note that's being sung there is that open A. That's that, remember that I told you that G. You could open that up. But there's another fingering that you could use there that adds that A. Since that's the A note there, you could go. That's kind of an odd chord. Sounds like a Beatle introduction chord. But you could go. So. So that's one. Or you could do the bar on all 3 strings just to get these 2 held down and put the 1st string at the 4th fret. See, now that's the same grouping of notes, but this one is moved up an octave, and it sounds much more spacious. So there's some options there. Now, anytime you've got all 3 strings held down, you've got that. and you hold the G on the fourth one. So there's a bunch of little elements in there. Now we've got the chorus. I'm drifting over in front of the words there. Sorry. Trying to get the strum stick as big as possible in the frame, which means that either the words have to be very tiny, or there's going to be a little intersection there. But I think you can still see what I'm doing, especially if you play it back once or twice. Now, it goes back to the first verse, and you can decide whether you want to take it up a little higher, like a little more energy now, louder, and a little, maybe some more accenting and more of the percussive stuff happening when you go back to the first verse, or you might want to take it back again. So, so that's the transition. Now, and I want to show you one little thing. That little sequence, here it is with just one finger. You can play that through the G chord. And here's that again, slow. Maybe even don't even do that fretted note at the end. Maybe just go dee 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 dee, and then so you're ready right on top of the beat for that the B minor. But that transition would be like, will you react? I have to be prepared for it. Let's see, I'll take the last one. So that's a little musical turnaround to get you back into the B minor. Now, if you decide to take the song back down to the, there, you could go. Now, there's that, and then the last time through, all your life you've never seen, at this third time through, open it up, move your pick up into the middle of the strings, pretend you're playing a 12-string guitar, let it ring, more mellow here than back here, or back here. Sorry. Now, I'm doing almost nothing extra in there besides just doing the strumming, because now that taking all that stuff away is a texture change. It makes it feel less busy, which might make it feel like it was dropping down, but we opened up the volume and pushed up into the very rich tonal area of the strumstick here, so it'll still carry as though you stepped forward and opened up with that chorus. So the end of the first verse, the first verse, which happens as the third verse, all your like a bird in flight. Let's say we're taking it down. Who will be her lover? All your life you've never seen no man taken by the wind. Will you stay as she promised to heaven? Would you ever goes to the B minor, and then it goes to the at the bottom here, G, and then B minor, taken by the wind, taken by the wind. That's taken by the wind, taken by the wind, and that's kind of like the Rhiannon part where it goes the G on Rhiannon, and then the B minor on un. Taken by the wind, taken by the wind, and then it goes out just with those same two chords, but the phrasing of the words changes so that the words are coming in on the B minor. Dreams unwind, thus a state of mind. Dreams unwind, thus a state of mind. So in the first group there, the B minor is hanging out without words against it, and in the other part, the B minor has words against it, and the G hangs out with no words against it. Even though the rhythm is the same all the way, there's not a change in the pattern. It's all two beats of one, two measures of one chord, two measures of the other. So, so will you ever win? Will you ever win? Then it goes to B minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. That's the transition into the G for taken by the wind. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Taken by the wind. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Taken by the wind. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or actually, and then there's a section of B minor to G with no words there. So, and then to the B minor. Dreams unwind, thus a state of mind. And so on to fade it out. And now how you want to deal with that ending, how many repeats you do, and whether you work some little melodies in there. Taken by the wind. Taken by the wind. That's up to you how you take that out. All right, so we've covered all the bits to that, and you will find that many of those little elements, even some of those little exact melodies, you can work into phrases in other songs that use the B minor chord and the G chord, and sometimes the D chord there. So what I'm going to do now, I'll say good night for this week, and I hope you all have a great week and are all safe and healthy and keeping busy doing what you need to do. And I'll just play this for a while, kind of to play it out, and then I'll wave goodbye, and I will see you all next Thursday. So take care. Like a bell in the night, and wouldn't you love to love her? Shows the sky like a bird in flight, and who will be her lover? All your life you've never seen a man taken by the wind. Would you stay if she promises you heaven? Would you ever win? Dreams unwind, love's a state of mind. Dreams unwind, love's a state of mind.